All right. Aloha. Good day, good morning, good evening, whenever you happen to be watching this fun movie. I'm going to continue my discussion on the Romans today, and I'm going to focus today on one of the most famous human beings on Earth in the history of humanity. Somebody everybody's heard of. You've all heard of him. His name is Julius Caesar. How about this? Were you born in the month of July? Well, if you were born in the month of July, you have an even greater connection to Julius Caesar because that month was named after him. We'll see how that connects back to him and why as we go through this. Okay, so here we go. You can see there are several surviving statuettes, busts of his face that remain from ancient times. This is one of them. Of course, this is a difficult science to keep track of and really know what they look like, but many people accept this as basically an image of what he may have looked like. There's the years that he lived just before the life of Jesus, all right? And so when we talk about Julius Caesar, a couple things we should really sort of focus on at the beginning, and that is this man is a patrician, and he comes from one of the, what I would sort of basically say is one of the oldest families of ancient Rome, and that is the family name is the Julii. You know, how the Romans established their names, and his name was really Gaius Julius Caesar. His family, this large family, they said they could trace their lineage all the way back to Troy. Of course, we talked about this even back when we talked about the Trojan War and Aeneas, and we read part of we read the Trojan War section of the Aeneid. And of course, we remember that Aeneas and the survivors of Troy were looking for a home. Well, the legend has it that the city that they eventually established is Rome. So Caesar and his family, they were on that. So they believed that they were descendants of the survivors of Troy. And now Julius Caesar, in his lifetime, he really had three things that make him famous. And sort of, I would say, these things also make him famous even to this day, more so his political career and what happened to him. He had a great military career. And these wealthy guys, remember, this is part of what these wealthy guys do. They try to parlay a military career into a political career. Caesar was also an excellent writer, and he wrote long histories of his campaigns that he was on in his military career, and by all accounts those are very good reads even till today. But really, if we go back to his lifetime, his military career is really the main thing, and he gets involved with it at a young age. He really spends a lot of time in the army, in the Roman army. This is a big part of his life, and he joins it early. He is recognized throughout his life for really being a brilliant military strategist. How's that sound? And that'll sort of manifest itself mostly later in life when he is a general. But when he is a young soldier, he actually wins something that the Romans call the Oak Leaves. And he won it at age 19. And just sort of to give you an idea of what that means, it's really an award for bravery. And doing something above and beyond. We would, in the United States, we would sort of say, well, what is the ultimate military honor that you can bestow on anybody? That's the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's the highest honor somebody in the military can receive. Sort of the equivalent. And he won that as a young man. And that was something that all people in ancient Rome understood and knew was really something. As he gets older and he becomes a general, he is most well known, and this is very important, he defeats the people that were known as the Gauls. And Gaul is modern day France. On the map you see France, that was Gaul during this time period. And the Gauls were a tough nomadic tribal people. Some were a little more permanent. And the Gauls fought themselves mostly, but they were pretty warlike, and they really threatened the city of Rome, sort of in a similar way that Hannibal did. Sometimes they would cross the Alps Not too often, but sometimes they would cross the Alps and sort of threaten the city of Rome. One time, Rome gave them a bunch of gold to leave them alone. And so they were always something that the city of Rome was nervous about. So finally, Rome found somebody to go up there and do something about it, and that guy was Julius Caesar. And let me continue this story about the invasion of Gaul. Part of that was the invasion of what the Romans called Britannia. And of course, you can see in that name, we would call that today, we would call that Great Britain. The British Islands, where England is. How's that sound? And this is a big deal because obviously you have to cross the English Channel to get from France to Great Britain. So this invasion of Britannia was a big, quite an accomplishment. It establishes Roman foothold in England, in Britain, that'll last for almost basically 500 years. The city of London is sort of, today is based on the original site where the Romans built a city. The entirety of the Gaul campaign, this is quite remarkable. Basically, Caesar marches his army into enemy territory. You don't see this very often in military history. He marches his army into enemy territory with the inability to be supplied from home. In other words, there's not caravans of food being followed. They're not being followed by caravans of food from Rome up into France. They are in enemy territory by themselves, and 7 years is a long time. There's a saying that comes from the Gaul campaign that Caesar was pretty ruthless, and in final victory, estimates are, some people say, and this is the old saying, that he killed 1 million Gauls, he sold 1 million Gauls into slavery, and the remaining 1 million Gauls surrendered. That's how brutal this campaign was. All right. He's also known for a Civil War victory, which I'll get to in just a moment. And so he is really, and I can tell you this again, I constantly tell you that I like to study military history. He is considered one of the great military minds of all time. All righty. Here's a famous quote that some of you are probably familiar with that is associated with Julius Caesar. This famous quote is a lot of fun. It is a Latin quote, and it is Veni Vidi Vici. Now, how many of you know what this means? This was supposedly, this is part of, you can find this quote in one of his books that he wrote about his campaigns in various places. It means, in Latin, it means, I came, I saw, I conquered. I bet some of you are familiar with that. Maybe you didn't know, but that is a quote that we associate with Julius Caesar. How about that? Okay, so now here's where the story gets interesting. We recall that at this particular time that Rome is a republic. It is a really sort of a democratic republic, I guess I would say, because there is voting. And we've sort of talked about this, and I'll come back to this in just a moment. But there's flaws in the Roman Republic. The Senate is too strong. The Senate has too much power. And people who have power, they want to protect their power. And so Caesar, who is a patrician and a potential senator or a potential consul member, one of the two consuls of the three branches, he represents a threat to that power. Why does he represent a threat? Because he's popular. The common people, the plebeians, you recall this term, the plebeians love this guy. And you study enough history, and let's be honest with each other. Military generals who are victorious are always popular. In the history of the United States, of course, we've had many presidents who were military generals, from George Washington, Ulysses S. Grant, all the way to Eisenhower in the 20th century. Okay, so this is a very, shouldn't be the least bit surprising. And so he poses a threat. So suddenly you have the aristocrats of Rome worried about this guy. Okay, so now here's where this story gets interesting. Okay, Roman law said that if you were a general in the Roman army and you were marching back home to Rome, that you had to give up your generalship at a particular boundary, sort of the boundary of Rome at that time. And this boundary was a river north of the city, and it's called the Rubicon River. Rubicon River's, it's still there today. And so this was Roman law. Now, why did this law exist? Well, if you recall in our discussion about the Roman Republic, they were very uptight. The early founders of Rome were very uptight about kingship. Remember, the Romans, the city of Rome, fought to be free from a king, and they said, we never want a king again. And so this was one of the mechanisms that was established in Roman law to make sure to discourage some individual from thinking that he could name himself king. Well, how would this work? Well, a conquering general could march his army into the city and declare himself king, because what does he have? He has an army at his back. He has an army to defend him. He has an army to exert power and force the city to accept this individual man as a king. So it was Roman law that a guy had to give up his generalship, okay? And there was a line. Now, does this sound familiar? There was a line he couldn't cross. Yes, that's exactly where that old saying comes from. Have you ever heard the old saying? Maybe you've been in an argument with your parents, and your parents say, don't cross that line with me, young man. Don't cross the line with me, young lady. That goes back to this moment in history. Okay, well, he is marching home, and the city understands what's happening, and they understand his popularity again. And so the leaders of the government, the Senate especially, they send a messenger up to meet him along the way before he ever gets to the Rubicon, and they say, hey, don't forget the law. Don't forget that you have to give up your generalship and become a private citizen. Don't forget. Okay? And of course, Caesar hadn't forgotten. He wasn't like, oh yeah, I forgot all about that. Gee, I'm sorry. That wasn't like that. He knew exactly what was going on. And so one of the debates, that this is a discussion about Julius Caesar. This is a debate about Julius Caesar, and that is, what were his intentions? Did Julius Caesar want to be king of the Roman Empire? And remember, Rome is an empire by this time. Rome has been expanding, even as a republic, it's been expanding. So now, and part of this problem with this debate is that, of course, we kind of all know, I think, that Julius Caesar is killed. So he doesn't live a full life. He never becomes king. He never becomes the emperor of Rome. And the question is, did he want to? Was that his plan? Well, if it was, he was very good at carrying out his plan. He was very sneaky. So he's ordered home, and he actually refuses to come home as a private citizen. He marches on Rome. He breaks Roman law. He crosses the Rubicon River. He crosses the line. Now, I do make a note here. He did try to negotiate. And again, was he negotiating in good faith? Did he really negotiate for the sake of, really being a good citizen and not breaking the law? No, I think this is very debatable. I think most people fall on the line of this debate that, yes, Caesar wanted to be king, but he was really smart about it. And he was he didn't just seize it. He didn't just grab it. He was patient. Okay? All right, so now let's continue with this story. The Senate and the leadership now have a problem. You can't just have somebody breaking the law. So the city of Rome, and of course, again, what I would sort of think is the Senate, the city of Rome sends out an army, okay, to defeat the lawbreaker. How's that sound? That's a good way to put it. Julius Caesar is now seen as a lawbreaker, okay? And so the city sends out the city army, and they send out the city army under a man named Pompey the Great. Pompey the Great was a consul general. Okay, so remember, he had the two consuls, the Senate, the Assembly. Pompey the Great had been an assembly. And by all accounts, Pompey himself was an outstanding military mind. He was a very good general in and of himself, very well considered. And as a matter of fact, Pompey and Julius Caesar knew each other very well. Okay, so this is by the way, this is Roman soldier versus Roman soldier. This is Roman versus Roman. Now, what kind of wars are those? Those are civil wars. And Julius Caesar is the victor. And I would kind of say, Julius Caesar's army, don't forget, battle hardened. Okay, these guys are tough as nails. They've been in enemy territory for 7 years. They're not afraid of anything. Pompey marches out the head of the city army, larger in size, but probably a little, those guys are a little softer. They probably have nicer uniforms. They probably, they train, but they live in the city, and all those niceties of the city are available to them. So this is two different armies. It takes 4 years, but Pompey is defeated, and he's actually defeated in Greece, if I'm not mistaken. Now, here's the thing, is that sort of an interesting part of this story. We sort of take a turn. I'm going to introduce you to a character you've all heard of. Pompey tries to escape to survive to Egypt. And when he goes to Egypt, he is assassinated. He is assassinated by the Pharaoh at this time as a young boy. And this Pharaoh's basically advisors think that the assassination of Pompey is a good idea, and that will ingratiate Egypt with this guy, Julius Caesar. But the fact of the matter is, Julius Caesar doesn't like this. And Julius Caesar basically is of the mindset, you don't kill Roman consuls. Anybody who kills a Roman consul is going to be on my bad side. I don't care if you think you did it for me, right? Does this make sense what I'm getting at? The Egyptians said, we're going to do this for Julius Caesar. We're going to kill Julius Caesar's enemy. Julius Caesar says, yeah, he might be my enemy, but he's still a Roman consul. And we are not going to set some kind of precedent where the assassination of Roman consuls is going to be allowed. So Caesar takes his army and invades Egypt. He doesn't like this. And this is where we meet this character that you've also all heard of her. Her name is Cleopatra. I've actually brought her up to you back when we discussed the Egyptians. She's one of the really sort of, I think, one of the 4 most famous people out of Egypt. There's some discussion, her family is not originally from Egypt. She's an ancestor of a general of Alexander the Great. All right? And this is where she comes into play. It was her little brother, all right? It was her little brother who was the pharaoh at that time. And so she had been basically ostracized from that family. Julius Caesar recognizes sort of the political tension in Egypt. He picks Cleopatra and he installs her as Pharaoh of Egypt. He spends a year there in Egypt, just enough time for him, Julius Caesar. Now he has a child with Cleopatra, okay? And Cleopatra was no dummy. She knew exactly what she was doing. Having a son with somebody she saw as potentially a future emperor of Rome, that would make her son the heir, she believed, the heir to the throne, to the emperorship of the Roman Empire. Did she love Julius Caesar? She was quite a bit younger. He was probably about twice her age at this particular time. But she did it, okay? She had a child with this man, and the boy's name was Caesarion, okay? And we'll get back to him in a later story, all right? So now here comes Julius Caesar back. He returns to Rome, and now the Senate has a problem with this guy who's basically undefeated. He is super popular with the plebeians, and the Senate decides to appoint him consul for life. Now this is not unheard of. This is not uncommon. There was a famous consul a couple hundred years before this named Cincinnatus, who was named consul for life for his generalship and the things that he accomplished. And this was sort of a compliment. This was sort of an honor. And the idea was we'll have 3 branches, but we'll have one consul, and the guy will do it for the rest of his life, and the Senate and the Assembly. This is not unheard of, okay? So this is a way that the Senate said, okay, let's sort of try to appease Caesar. Well, they sort of eventually also name him dictator for life, or he names himself dictator for the rest of life. Now, this is a little bit different than just being a consul for life. You can see that this is a little bit different. These are attempts to appease him, okay? Appeasement, all right, to calm somebody down, to make somebody relax. The aristocrats of Rome don't like this guy. They fear kingship. They fear their argument. Okay, the patrician class, the aristocrat class, makes the argument that they fear his potential of kingship, that he's going to name himself emperor, that he's a threat because of that. But the reality is, they also hate him personally. They do not like him. Yeah, they fear his power, but generally he is not necessarily liked as much. Now, why is this? Well, he's a little, even though he's from an extremely wealthy family, he's real rough around the edges. You know, he grew up around, he actually grew up around regular Roman plebeians. His family owned, as a matter of fact, his family owned what was in essence an apartment building. And so that was one of their types of income that the family had. And so young Julius Caesar spent a lot of time around regular people that lived in this apartment building. He spent a lot of time, obviously, around regular soldiers, and by all accounts, his soldiers loved him big time. Okay? All right, so there are other things that he does when he becomes a government official. Obviously, his victories, as I just said. He created a lot of jobs in the city of Rome when he came back. He rearranged the taxation system, all right? He rearranges the taxation system in the city to make it more fair, all right? I will tell you something else that ingratiated him with the regular folks, and that is that he is the first ever to allow plebeians in the Senate, all right? And the Senate was the Senate was seen as, you know, the Senate was set up by Romulus, of course. Romulus set it up so the original families of Rome, what are going to be the aristocratic families of Rome, which they call the patricians, are always going to be senators. You could only be a senator if you were a patrician. Caesar lets plebeians in. And of course, plebeians think this is great. This is like, hey, he's one of us. Hey, he cares about us. You can see that this would really make some of these patricians really angry. Now, why would he do this? Well, you know, that's part of it. He's trying to increase his popularity with the regular folks. But there's probably another reason, and it has to do with the fact that, you know, he understands that he needs some personal protection. So he understands, hey, these plebeians, some of these guys are a little rough around the edges, a little rough on, you know, they're regular folks, work regular jobs, they're a little tougher. You know, he kind of understands, maybe I need some personal protection. Okay? All right, so that is part one. Please join me for part two of the discussion of Julius Caesar, and that will be the next one. Here he is again. We'll see you again next time. Aloha and mahalo.